Thank you.
Jayom Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Shtotarashada Shriman Matsya Divina Grazia Bhai Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Guru Parampara Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Guru Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Harinama Mahamantra Yoga Dharma Ki Jai Shri Briyat Mridanga Ki Jai Glory to the devotees.
All glories to the devotees of the Lord. Welcome ladies, welcome gentlemen. Are you all right? Despite the hot weather and the long journey. If you need anything at all, just please let me know. Thank you for this wonderful bhajan. And also for the expert instrument playing. You're very good musicians and singers. I welcome Shangovinda Prabhu. Hari Bol to all of you. For me it's a great joy and an honor to be here. Welcome, welcome. Welcome ladies, welcome gentlemen. All of you, even those of you who are residents here, because the time we're given to remain in this extraordinary and favorable opportunity for spiritual realization, that is the human form of life, in the company of Vaishnavas, and with this fixed idea, which is a kind of a monomania, the monomania of becoming spiritually realized. From a psychiatric point of view, it could be considered a monomania, but we're pretty sure we could explain the reasons behind this mania. Hundreds of times this has happened, and over again we could explain that R is a mania just because it is followed by few people. If we were the majority, then the manias would be different ones. Anyway, welcome again. After all, the Sanskrit term manas technically means that everything it produces is a mania. Everything that comes from manas. But the point is that if we use manas in the service of others, at the service of every living being, at the service of the world, or as it is now trendy, the environment, only if we put it at the service of the creation, of the creator, of creatures, then also even the products of the mind are activated, purified, sanctified, and we coexist with the mind, which is one of the first manifestations of Prakriti, from the primeval state, primordial state, where it is indistinguishable and invisible, avyakta, in the process of manifestation, the Mahatattva passes through this state, which is the mental state, but it can be brought back to its original source. I remember, I guess it was actually in Bologna about 20 years ago, I gave a lecture entitled Journey to the Origins of the Mind. If we only could, like in certain sports, go upstream the current of some mountain river and arrive at its source, then we'd see pure water. In the same way, the mind at its origin it's not contaminated by hallucinations. It is a product of Prakriti, but it's still at its original state with which one can coexist and live and reason. And indeed, we can bring it back to the state of sattva. Then, when the mind manas becomes sattvic, it can also become shuddha manas, the pure mind, which is not the contaminated mind which people experience from morning to night. This is a rare mind, a known mind to many of us. Because the senses are part of the mind is part of the identificating principle, the ego, and the identificating principle, hankara, is part of the buddhi. And buddhi, thank God, is part of the atma. This is wonderfully explained in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But since we have decided we stay together for almost more or less 90 minutes, we have organized a game. You pose the questions and I answer. So let's play this game. Krishna's pastimes are called Leela, therefore never underestimate games. If you happen to underestimate playing with children in the presence of a child, you'll kill the beauty of it all. Because children only want people who play, people willing to play. So, in this game, you ask the questions and I answer. And let's remember that this is just a game.
Grazie, innanzitutto grazie, siamo molto felici e onorati di essere qua. E molti di noi hanno sentito le lezioni Matsya Avatar Prabhu. E hanno letto libri, hanno sentito anche solo nominare all'estero in Italia, quindi è davvero un grande onore, siamo molto felici di questa opportunità, davvero anche emozionati. E quindi molti di noi sono appassionati della Gita, abbiamo un gruppo di studio della Gita la domenica sera, è così che ci siamo conosciuti. E quindi se abbiamo tante domande, ne abbiamo scritte alcune da cui vorremmo partire, e poi magari sentiamo se ci sono altre spontanee, ovviamente tutti sono invitati a...
Nice. Very nice. Everyone is habilitated.
Yes, absolutely.
La prima è il fatto che molti di noi sono giovani e vivendo in questo mondo contemporaneo, a volte ci chiediamo come è possibile prendere questa conoscenza così antica, questa conoscenza spirituale, e applicarla nel mondo di oggi, che è un mondo molto veloce, molto tecnologico, molto informatico. E quindi la domanda sarebbe: qual è l'applicazione, la rilevanza della cultura antica dell'India, cosiddetta anche cultura spirituale, nel mondo contemporaneo?
It's been a long time since the meaning of tradition has been lost. I would say at least a few millennia. But it wasn't so clear because many traditional traits were still present in civilization, in society, in the family, in the relationships between parents and children, and within marriage. Now everything is degrading more and more. Everything is devastated, deregulated. So now it is clear that everything is falling downwards with great suffering for everyone. This is the first conversation I had with Srila Prabhupada in our first encounter. Prabhupada was looking at me in the eyes, and he said that humanity is suffering because it has embarked on the path of plundering nature, the path of cruelly exploiting nature and animals, and also human beings. 45 years ago,
I found this slightly too much. I didn't criticize the person who was telling me this. Considering that I found myself aligned with the meaning, couldn't understand that the situation was actually already that serious. Then I changed my mind. I understood. The situation is actually very serious. I was 31 years old.
I didn't have the experience to fully understand what Srila Prabhupada was saying, but I could understand the general meaning of it. And I did agree that that was the direction society had taken, and the gravity of it.
They say, if you seek, you shall find.
But those who know what they're seeking, they will find more easily and more quickly. And so it was for me, precisely because Prabhupada told me where to seek, what to search for, what to be aware of, in order to realize what was happening. So, like never before today, it is so vital and important, urgent to bring back the traditional knowledge, especially the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata,
all the literature, Smriti literature, Vaishnava literature, the books by Jiva Goswami,
the Tattva Sandarbha, for example, or by Sanatana Goswami, by Rupa Goswami, like the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and many more texts.
The Upanishads, for example, Vedic literature, Shruti. Otherwise, people who have those negative qualities that we mentioned, always rushing, very distracted, superficial. People today are superficial. And as a result of that, mental health issues are increasing. Paranoid syndromes
and fear, very accurately fueled by a 24/7 continuous propaganda.
Induced fears, terror, threats, blackmails, obligations.
These phenomena that we are facing are destined to last long in the future.
Kali Yuga is not short. Human life is short in Kali Yuga, yes. And maybe Seneca knew this when he wrote the Brevitatis Vitae. But Kali Yuga is not short. And so, today, like never before, it is important and desperately necessary to go back to the traditional studies of Bhagavad Gita, which is a treasure, one of the many treasures, torchlight, most luminous
in that field of studies that is called timeless philosophy. For this reason, we need to consider ourselves extremely
privileged for coming into contact not just with the book Bhagavat, but with the
person Bhagavat. Given that the book Bhagavat without the person Bhagavat doesn't work. This is explained in the Shrimad Bhagavatam at the very beginning. You need the person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. The person Bhagavat without the book Bhagavat does not work. It's like a lawyer who does not quote the legal code. He can talk forever, but he's not saying anything, because one must be able to refer back to the legal code if one wants to be taken into consideration. And if we attribute any value to a lawyer, that depends on the extent that he or she is coherent with the legal code. And our legal codes are the Shastras. And this is so not because we made a sentimental choice. Sentimentalism is not sentiment. Quite the opposite. Like pietism is not piety. And etc. etc. Rather, we made a deliberate choice. We did what the real scientists should do. We should take the teachings, jnana, in Sanskrit, jnana,
which sounds like gnosis in Greek, gnosis. We took jnana and we practiced it, because a theory without a application, pragmatic application, praxis, theory without practice is nil, is useless.
You can have so much metaphysical knowledge, and you can quote so many verses,
but if we don't practice that, if we don't apply that into our lives, we become ridiculous. And we don't produce anything good for ourselves and what to speak for others. So the answer is here and now. We need to apply, not just study, which is very, very important. To study is very, very important, necessary.
That's why we founded the public university for Indo-Vedic studies. We started 26 years ago. In the last 26 years, we kept improving year by year to let as many people as possible to undertake an organic study course, not just jumping from one book to the other randomly.
A praxis is needed, an epistemology is needed, a method is needed. So we provided thousands and thousands and thousands of people with a method. Why? Because we believe
that here and now there is a great need. That's what Prabhupada told me that first time we spoke.
Study the Bhagavad Gita. Become a devotee. Devote your life to this mission. And explain the Bhagavad Gita to all people you meet.
Speak of Bhagavad Gita to everyone.
Don't fear, do not fear, Krishna will protect you.
Do not fear, Krishna will protect you. And I was looking at him like a young man, a 30-year-old man looks at an 80-year-old man. And now I am almost 80. And I also meet people younger than 30.
Does this ring a bell? So,
roles are reversed.
And this is the beauty of life.
But if I knew that just in the blink of an eye, I would find myself at the age of the person I was hearing from with veneration and rapt attention, I would have not believed that. Maybe I could have guessed that in theory, but to find myself in that same situation right now is something else.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Come ti chiami?
Martina.
Martina.
Marina?
Martina.
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 Prego tu possa
I pray
accettare
that
i
you
miei
may accept
omaggi.
my obeisances.
Arrivo.
La
The next
prossima
question is,
domanda è:
the West
in
is
Occidente vige una
characterized by a
società
secular
laica dove il più
society
delle
where
volte
most
si
of the
tende a
time
pensare
there is
che
a
scienza
tendency
e
to think that
religione siano
science
in
and religion
opposizione
are
tra
in
loro.
conflict with one another.
Lo sviluppo
Is the
scientifico e
scientific and
tecnologico è
technological
davvero
development
in
really
antitesi
in
con lo sviluppo
opposition with
della
the
fede in
development
Dio?
of faith in God?
Sì e no.
Yes and no.
Volete che parta con il no o con il sì?
Would you like me to start with the no or with the
Con
yes?
il sì.
With the
Allora,
yes?
è in
Okay then.
antitesi perché ha
So there is an
deciso
opposition because science has
proditoriamente,
decided
quindi
in a
quasi con
dishonest
arroganza,
way and almost with arrogance.
Sono moderato perché ci ho
And I'm
messo
trying
quasi.
to be moderate because I said almost.
Ha deciso
Science
che
has decided that
scienza è
science
solo
is
ciò
only what can be
che si può
measured
misurare, che si può pesare,
and weighed, and that is
che ha a che fare
related
con
with
fenomeni
phenomena
che sono ripetibili.
that are repeatable.
Per cui ha deciso
Therefore, science has decided
proditoriamente
in a
di
dishonest way to live outside
dalla
its
pertinenza
definition all those
tutte
sciences
quelle scienze che nella
that in the
tradizione avevano
tradition
molto
had
più
much
valore
more
di questa
value
cosiddetta
than
tecne.
this so-called technology.
Senza negare il valore
Without
della
denying
tecne
the value of
e del
techne
logos,
and of
tecno,
logos, techno, logos,
tecnologia,
technology,
senza
we
negare
don't want to deny
tutto ciò che ha prodotto.
anything that was produced, was created with technology. For example, despite me having my vocal cords very weak due to the extreme use that I made of them, however, we can give thanks to high technology that allows this transductor, this microphone, to multiply and intensify and turn up the volume of my voice. So we don't want to give back dates instead of figs, or bread instead of focaccia bread, as Dante says. It is not that we say you cannot talk with us and so we do not talk with you. No, it's just you don't talk to us, but still we talk with you. We want to talk with you. And we recognize that this technology, even when it is used in the service of truth, of happiness, justice, of compassion, of mercy, karuna and kripa, which are among the 26 qualities from the Chaitanya Charitamrita's Madhya Lila, and they are the two most important ones, karuna, kripalu. So we accept that branch of science, but we do not think that it covers all sciences, because the science of the self is much more important. The science of the soul deals with eternity. It extends the field of experience to eternity, but it's not a positivistic experience. This is how it's called, a science that doesn't want to dialogue. Positivism, the positive science, which is not the contrary of negative. It is positive in the sense that it deals with tangible matter, prakriti. I can measure it, I can measure the K of breaking load, the flexibility, the traction, we can gain different experiences. And that's the science that deals with things. But we are not things. The spiritual being is spiritual energy. So that science that has decided a priori in the second half of the 19th century to only deal with Prakriti, but we are not Prakriti. Therefore, by being Brahman, by being Purusha, Atman, we do need another science. So we must not lose faith in the possibility that the several branches of science can dialogue with one another, even though at the present moment it is predominant, hegemonic, the branch of science that does not want to have a dialogue. And we have to be self-sufficient. It is as if in a couple one wants to have a dialogue but the other does not want to dialogue. That's alright, as long as the person that does want to have a dialogue does not despair. Shame on me if I'm dependent on others' recognition in order to experience joy. That's a very pitiful condition. Yes, all right, others are very important, but everybody must become self-sufficient and independent, especially from the emotional point of view. When it comes to evaluations, that's different. We do care about others' evaluations and feedback given by others. But from the emotional point of view, I must be happy with myself regardless of what other people say. I'm not my performances. Careful, because this is one of the most relevant topics nowadays, because people measure one another only on the basis of performance. Performance of a male, of a female, professionals, a worker, entrepreneurs, intellectuals. Everyone is heavily conditioned by performances. The spiritual being's performance is to love. And at times, love manifests in a hardly recognizable way and debased form. If by recognition we mean those parameters provided by the cheesy literature, which is deceptive and fails to explain the truth and highly capable of putting people under illusion. So, we need to encounter the book Bhagavat, the person Bhagavat, and stay with people who do follow the philosophy Bhagavat. Also because the Lord is known as Sattva Tampati or Bhagavan. Sattva Tampati. Pati means protector, Lord, shelter of. Whom? Sat. Of those who are situated in truth. Truth is a treasure which cannot be bought or exchanged. We cannot do without truth for any reason. So in these terms, so-called science today is inappropriate. It is not the field of such science. So one who pointedly searches for such recognitions in that science, they are doomed. Yes, they can probably have success in the sciences that measure objects and things. An engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, they can have a lot of success, but that has nothing to do with the self, with the soul. It has nothing to do. When the time will come for them to want a spiritual experience, to understand things and the function of things, when they will search for the meaning of things, then the study of engineering, of law, of medicine won't be enough any longer, anymore. I could make an endless list. But to save time, I won't do it. But one would smile at the endless, infinite list of professions that people have invented. Because they actually just four: Chaturvanyam gunakarmam. The social divisions are simply 4. It's a mania to specialize the specialized again, and then they become totally incapable of making a synthesis, because it is the vision of synthesis that is lacking in people nowadays. So we need to be very expert at presenting our ideas and opinions in a way that scientists are not discouraged. It would be a serious mistake otherwise. That's why I told you we have to appreciate the technology that is behind this microphone, behind these webcams and many other instruments. We want to encourage. We should not act like children. You told me this, so I told you that. And there are people that maintain such an infantile mind till the last breath. So we need to break free from the infantile mind, from the childish personality, and look with open eyes, with eyes that see which are the treasures of this world. And if any of you has any talent, then it means that they must share it with the world. There you go. I like it this way much better, instead of using the term preaching. Who wants to hear one preaching? No one wants to hear you preach. And they're actually right, because they've been cheated, deceived and misled. We must communicate and share our experience, not only the things we read. We must shift from the text of wisdom to the wisdom of those texts. I never expressed it that way. It's always a first time. So we need to become the wisdom within the text, not merely referring to what we read, which is good. It's very important, because if we don't know it, we can't really do anything. But to know it, then we have to transfer it from the intellectual level to the spiritual level that is in the heart, and to feel, to act in accordance with that wisdom. And I was saying that we must realize that people need help, because they're so much rooted in known reality. And this is a form of perversion, to understand things as they're not, and maybe also with sincerity. They're called distortions. When somebody is in distortion, it's like, I don't know if you ever had problems with your eyes, then you see distorted shapes, perverted forms. They're not real shapes, but one would bet everything on that they saw that particular thing. To explain it to one of my children, the most scientific one, I used the example of a cane inside the water. One would swear that there's just a broken line and not a cane. But when you take it out of water, you see that it's actually straight. What appears to the eyes is seldom what it actually is. Perhaps we should not use the word almost. That wouldn't be a lie. But when you tell people, you almost never say the right thing, then people get angry, even if you say almost, even if you just say almost. So we can only say this to people that we know, people we have agreed that I'm going to say what I have to say. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hare Krishna,
Srila Gurudeva, obeisances. My heartfelt gratitude for this invitation. It is a great joy to finally be able to see you. It is a great joy to finally be able to see you and listen to you in person, beyond the screen of a computer, after all this time. I pose the next question. Can science prove the existence of God?
For all the reasons I've already explained, no. Because science in itself cannot explain God. But he cannot even explain who we
occuparsi del
are.
nostro corpo.
He can explain the body.
Conosce nei dettagli
Science
la
knows in
composizione chimica
detail
del sangue,
the chemical
conosce nei
composition of
dettagli,
blood. He can know in detail
i neuroni, conosce nei
neurons.
dettagli
He can know
il
in
tessuto
detail the
osseo,
bone
conosce
tissue.
nei dettagli
He can know in detail
l'energia elettrica, il
electric
magnetismo,
energy, magnetism.
conosce molto.
Science
Ma
can
non
know
si
a
può
lot,
occupare di ciò che non è
but he
cosa,
cannot
proprio per
deal
loro
with
stessa
that
definizione.
which is not objects
Non
by
dobbiamo
its own
nemmeno
definition.
aspettarci, non dobbiamo nemmeno
We should not even expect that
equivocare
from
su
science.
questo.
We should not misunderstand this.
Se qualcuno chiedesse,
If someone asked me, for example,
tu mi puoi
but can you
dimostrare l'esistenza
demonstrate
di Dio?
the existence of God?
Io risponderei,
I would answer
leggendo la domanda che mi
that
era stata
question.
inviata, ma cosa intendi tu per
But
dimostrazione?
what do you mean by demonstration?
Ecco, se la persona intende una
So,
dimostrazione fisica,
if that person
non è
meant
possibile.
a physical demonstration, then it's
Proprio
not
perché loro
possible.
non si occupano altro che di
Simply
fisico.
because
Quindi come
scientists
possiamo
deal
dimostrare
only
ciò che fisico
deal
non è?
with nothing else other than matter, and
Il fisico,
so how can they explain something that is not physical?
il fisico,
Matter, physics,
Prakriti,
prakriti, if you like,
chimico,
or physics, chemistry,
scaturisce
originates
da-
from
dalla stessa
the
sorgente
same
da cui
source
scaturisce
from
lo
which
spirito,
originates spirit,
il Purusha,
Purusha,
il Brahman,
Brahman,
Atman,
Atman.
spiegato è detto nel Mahabharata.
This is explained in the Mahabharata, in the Adiparva.
Ma poi si presentano come due
But then
manifestazioni diverse,
they appear as two different manifestations,
come non puoi
as well as you can't
spiegare la
explain
presenza
the presence
della psiche.
of the
Questo termine
psyche.
psiche
This term
risale
psyche
a Platone.
dates back to
Platone
Plato.
con psiche
Plato, by
intendeva
psyche,
l'anima.
meant the
Oggi
soul.
la
But
psicologia non
nowadays,
intende più l'anima.
psychology no longer refers to
Anzi,
it as the
proibisce agli
soul.
iscritti agli
Actually,
all'albo
it is
di
prohibited.
parlare in termini di anima.
Professional psychologists are prohibited to speak in terms of the
Proibisce di
soul.
inserire il concetto di eternità.
Psychologists are
queste
not
sono tutte
allowed to mention the
caratteristiche dello
concept
spirito.
of eternity. But
Quindi
these
c'è
are
stato un
all
divorzio,
characteristics
c'è
of the
stato
spirit. So
proprio
there's been a
per
divorce,
esempio,
a
per
separation. For
millenni
example,
la psicologia
for
non era
millennia,
una scienza a sé, faceva parte
psychology
della
was not a
filosofia.
science on its own, it was a branch of philosophy.
Sofia,
Sophia,
sapienza,
wisdom or
evidentemente
knowledge,
possiede conoscenze
it's
della psiche,
clearly
se no non potrebbe essere sapienza,
has information and knowledge of
sarebbe
the
una
psyche,
conoscenza
of
tecnica.
the soul. Otherwise, it would not
E
be
qui c'è una
wisdom.
bella differenza tra il
It would
linguaggio
just be technical
tecnico e il
knowledge.
linguaggio
But there is a
poetico.
big difference between technical
mitopoetico.
language and poetical
Il
language,
linguaggio
or
del mito, il
mythopoetic
mito è di
language.
fondamentale
The
importanza
language of the myth. The language of the myth is of
Ci
key
aiuta
importance. It helps
a
us
prendere il volo,
to take off.
a non restare confinati dentro il linguaggio
It
tecnico.
helps
Il
us
linguaggio
not to remain
tecnico è
confined within the
definito,
limits of
significa
technical knowledge.
definito.
Technical knowledge. The technical
Non può
language
andare
is
oltre la
defined.
sua
Defined.
definizione.
It means it cannot
Altrimenti
go
è altro.
beyond the
Se 4
definition.
è 4,
Otherwise
non può
it
essere 4 e mezzo o
Could
2.
be something else.
Questo è il
4
linguaggio
means
tecnico,
4.
4 è 4.
It cannot be
Ma
anything
quando
else.
io vedo
This is
Shangovinda
technical language. But if I see Shamgovinda
e
and I say,
ti vedo raggiante come un
I
sole,
see you glowing
uno
like
non
a
lo può
sun,
prendere alla
one
lettera,
cannot take this
o pensa
literally.
che io sia da manicomio, perché lui non
Otherwise,
è un sole,
otherwise they would think I'm crazy because it's not a sun.
cerca di sganciarsi
Or
dalla limitazione del linguaggio tecnico ed
he
entrare
tries
in quello
to
mitopoetico che ha molte
separate
ulteriorità.
the technical language
Quindi,
from the poetic one
Dio
and understand the higher
ne
meaning.
parlano abbondantemente le Upanishad,
So God
ne parla abbondantemente
It's largely spoken about in the Upanishad, in the Smriti literature, like Ramayana and Mahabharata. In the sixth book, for example, the Bhishma Parva, there is a jewel that is the Bhagavad Gita, which is extensively on the topic of God. God replied this to Arjuna: why can't I see you in your form? And Krishna said, because you don't have the eyes. So in the 11th chapter, Krishna gave Arjuna the eyes to see. We can't have the same eyes. We need to do what Arjuna did. We need to behave as Arjuna behaved. When he had a problem which seemed unsolvable to him, Arjuna asked Krishna to explain how to deal with it, with that. Which means, tell me how can I understand this? First you told me that knowledge is superior to action, and now you tell me to fight. So Arjuna is confused. But people that we meet today are far more confused than Arjuna was. Moreover, Arjuna wanted to escape from confusion, while people today, they want to sink into confusion even more. So we cannot show the object God so that the people can measure it and weight it and bring it home. In this way, they are exposed to all the deceits that religions created for the gullible people. False belief must never be encouraged. Trust, faith, yes. Faith must be based on reality. If we create goodness, if we are producer, creator of goodness, and by producing this goodness will multiply, then our transformation is going to be fast. If we practice the virtues and pursue knowledge, then we become trustworthy. And then people will no longer ask silly questions. They will ask, how did you get that which I cannot define, but I see you rich with it. This goodness that I am able to see, but I cannot express. Of course you're not able to express it, because all your experience is objectified, but this good is not an object. If you want, what I just said is a demonstration that God exists. But a preparation is needed in order to see Him, to hear Him, to feel God's presence. Shall we move on?
Haribol Maharaj. Daniele. We accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for your service, the one of continuing the mission of Srila Prabhupada. The question is,
qual è il contributo più importante che la cultura dello yoga può offrire all'Occidente?
The connection with God. This is from the Sanskrit root of the word yoga, which is huge. And in that very root, which means reconnection, the book, the text, the most authorized source is the Bhagavad Gita. But also the Yoga Sutra by Patanjali is also, that's also an authority. Starting with the first pada, the Samadhi Pada by Patanjali, Yoga Sutras, Yoga Darshan, which are part of the 6 ways for spiritual realization, as it is indicated in the Shruti. Path is called Ashtika. To be in accordance with that which is. to be
e
astika.
anche swastika, ciò che è. Poi, come sapete, anche i simboli più sacri possono
Even the more
diventare
sacred
sinonimi di
symbol
massacro,
can
che
become
sta nella
synonyms
croce,
of
non solo la swastika.
massacre. The Christian cross as well, not only
La
the
mezzaluna
swastikas,
dell'Islam,
the half
cioè a
moon
volte
in
in
Islam.
nome e
Sometimes in the
all'ombra
name of sacred symbols,
di simboli sacri che sono sacri,
which are
ovviamente,
undoubtedly
si
sacred,
compiono crimini orrendi.
terrible crimes are committed.
Come oggi in nome della
In the
democrazia
same way
si
today,
commettono
in the
crimini
name of
orrendi.
democracy, terrible crimes are
Quindi
committed.
non vi innamorate di queste
Please,
definizioni
therefore,
belle
do not
fatte,
fall in
già
love with
fatte.
these labels and definitions,
Guardiamo cosa
pre-made
c'è dietro.
definitions. Let us have a
Questa
look what
democrazia.
lies behind these
Siamo nei
terms.
primi anni,
For example, democracy. We are in the early years
siamo proprio in Grecia, si era
in
da
Greece,
pochissimo
when
instaurata
democracy
la
had
democrazia, quindi
just
c'era
been
stata la tirannide,
established after the
una
tyranny,
lunga tirannide.
a long
La
tyranny,
tirannide dei 30 non era
the
durata tanto, ma
so-called tyranny
avevano
of the
fatto crimini
30. It
orribili,
didn't last long,
orrendi.
but the horrible crimes were committed.
Abbattuta la tirannide,
When the
venne
tyranny
ricostituita
was
la
ended,
democrazia.
a democracy was rebuilt,
E chi
reestablished,
assassinano? Socrate.
and Socrates
Uno
was
dei più grandi
assassinated.
pensatori, uno dei
One
più
of the
grandi,
biggest thinkers, one of the greatest visionary of spirit, of the virtues, of the
da cui
goodness,
prende tantissimo
and from
spunto
whom
Platone.
Plato takes a lot of inspiration.
Quindi anche lì democrazia,
So
non vi
democracy,
innamorate dei nomi,
don't fall in love with the
perché a
name,
volte c'è solo il nome.
because at
ahimè.
times it's just a name, all us.
Quindi,
So,
tornando a noi,
going back to your question,
può rileggere la domanda per favore?
could you repeat your question, please?
Qual è il contributo più importante che la cultura dello yoga può offrire all'Occidente?
Yes,
Quindi anche
well,
con yoga, attenzione,
let us be careful with
perché
the
ci sono
term yoga,
contorsionisti
because there are
di
contortionists of
ogni
all
risma che
kinds
con lo yoga non hanno nulla a che
who
fare.
have nothing to do with yoga.
Ci sono spacciatori di yoga.
There are yoga
Con lo yoga
swindlers
non sanno niente,
that have
non hanno niente a
nothing
che
to do with yoga.
fare. Io ne ho fatto esperienza molte volte
I experienced this many times,
e sono diventato
and
un
I've
fervido
become a strong
sostenitore
supporter
che
of
prima
the
di
fact
dire
that
che una disciplina
before addressing
yoga
a discipline as
si
yoga,
deve analizzare a fondo
we must
e capire
analyze
se
it
sono i
thoroughly
principi che
and
riconnettono a
understand
Dio oppure no.
whether
Il primo
there
che
are
elenca
those
Patanjali,
principles which do reconnect to God or not.
Ishvara,
The
Pranidhana,
first one that Patanjali
che
established
le tecniche
was
che io
Ishvara
insegno,
Pranidhana.
tutte le tecniche che io insegno non hanno successo
Techniques
se non vengono
I teach,
offerte
all techniques I
in uno
teach are
spirito
not successful
di devota
unless they are
sottomissione
offered
a
in a
Ishvara,
spirit
a
of
Dio.
devout submission to Ishvara,
Qui
God.
siamo il Sutra 16 del
This is from the
Samadhi.
16th Sutra of the
Krishna
Samadhipada.
Manmanabhava Madbhaktam,
Krishna Manmanabhava
pensa sempre a
Madbhaktam.
me.
Always
che
think
fai,
of me.
fallo per me.
Whatever you do, do
Offrilo
it
a
for
me.
me. Offer it to me.
Quel che sacrifichi, sacrificalo per me.
If you make a sacrifice for me.
Sono io, il Signore degli yagya,
Because I am the
dei
Lord of
sacrifici e
the
delle
yajna,
ascesi.
of the sacrifices and of all ascesis.
Bhaktaram yagya tapasam, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, il Signore di tutti i mondi.
The Lord of all
Se ti lo
worlds.
offri a me, quello è yoga.
If you offer it to me, then that is yoga.
Io non sono contrario alle asana.
I'm not
Se
against the
spiegate
asana.
bene e se eseguite
If
bene,
well
servono
explained
per
and
mettere
properly
il corpo
practiced,
finalmente un po'
yoga
in pace
asanas, if well practiced, they
e
can help the
mettere
body
quella
feel
mente
peace.
febbrile,
And they help
manicomiale,
put the
un po' in
mind,
pace, paranoica, un po' in pace.
the feverish mind,
Guarisce
maniacal
il
mind,
corpo,
paranoid
guarisce la
mind
mente.
to rest. It heals the body, it heals the
Questo non è il
mind.
fine dello yoga.
But be aware, because this is not the
È
goal of yoga.
connettersi.
That is
Solo che
connection.
Krishna nel sesto capitolo dice chiaramente
Krishna
che
in
chi
the 6th
fallisce
chapter
nell'educare la mente
clearly
non
says
può
that
neanche
those who
parlare
fail
di
to
realizzazione
educate, to
spirituale.
control the mind, cannot even talk about
Perché
spiritual
se la mente si
realization.
mette come un bastone tra le ruote,
Because if the mind is like a stick in the wheels, you can't make any progress. So I have an interest in psychology only to the extent that it helps me to take out the stick in the wheels and directly access the soul. Otherwise, the barrier of the mind can't be overcome. Is this enough? Hari. We could say 100 times more, but welcome.
Hi, Haribol. I'm Antonio. I'm Antonio, and I'm a yoga teacher.
Nice. Very glad to meet you.
I've been an art restorer for all my life.
Wow.
Yes, mainly of paintings.
Wow.
But at a certain point, I felt the necessity of spirit.
Me too. You know that I used to be the number one assistant of one of the greatest art connoisseur in the world, who supplied great artworks and masterpieces from the 16th century, from the Renaissance, from the Humanism, to Sotheby's, Christie's, Borghetti's Senior, the one of the museum in California. And I was in love with the Renaissance. I was in love with the artworks. I studied at the Ministry of Art. I did my studies, proper studies for that career, and I was really... But Krishna saved me. But my love for the arts remained a purified love. Because the greatest artist is Krishna. Let me be straightforward. Not even Tiepolo painted beautiful skies as Krishna does.
When I started to feel the beauty of the soul within me, everything changed. Finally, even my job transformed into something else.
It's exactly like
free
that.
From the economic interest.
I worked for almost 20 years after I met Prabhupada, because nobody asked me to stop working. Also because with my job I contributed in many ways, and so they were all happy with me working. And I was happy too, because my profession was extremely pleasing. I dealt with people with whom I used to be in good terms. But I felt that something was missing. I mean, I felt that the things I was doing were spoiling my clients rather than helping them. I created palaces and mansions for them. For them I decorated extremely refined spaces. But these people then remain entangled in such spaces, and me too as well. So around 1973 I started having this feeling that I was not doing any good to them, precisely because I didn't really focus the purpose of my life. I used to know that when I was younger, when I was a child, I used to know what my purpose was. I lost it, so to speak, but after a long searching, in 1976, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada became a reality. It was the first devotee I encountered, at least in this lifetime, and he talked to me about Krishna, and he talked to me about what I should do, but he was convinced that I would do it. Lucky him.
Thank you for your job.
His mercy.
It's really beautiful.
So as I was saying before, that we need the person Bhagavat, because I had already read the Bhagavad Gita, but it didn't break through my heart. Yes, well, I knew it was an extraordinary work. I understood that was important in the tradition, but it is the person Bhagavat that works as a detonator.
La domanda è: lo yoga si fonda su una disciplina settaria o portatrice di valori universali?
So it depends. You can say yes or you can say no.
C'ho una gran voglia di dare un
I would love
nome
to give a
quello
name
per
to
cui
that,
dovremmo dire no, ma
which we should say no.
chi mi vuole bene,
But those
chi
who
mi
love
consiglia,
me
mi dice no,
and they advise me
perché ci sono
not to
tante
do
persone
that I must not,
condizionate,
because there are
quindi
many
non lo dico.
people with so many conditionings, and so I am
Ci
not
sono
saying it.
delle mode di yoga
There are
che
many
non hanno
trends
niente a
of
che
yoga
vedere
that have
con la
nothing to
funzione dello
do
yoga,
with the purpose
che hanno
of yoga.
totalmente smarrito il senso.
They have
Quindi
totally
sono
lost its original
completamente
meaning.
identificate
So
con i
they're
corpi e con le
completely
menti
identified with their
e
bodies
vogliono
and with their
lasciare fuori.
minds,
Potrei
and they want to
raccontare
leave
aneddoti
out.
spassosissimi.
I could tell you
Sul
very
momento
hilarious
non erano tanto
anecdotes.
spassosi, però più
At
ci
the time, they
penso
weren't
e
really
più mi
hilarious at
faccio
all.
ridere.
But the more I
I
think
fatti che mi sono accaduti
about
proprio, no?
them, the
Persone
more
che mi hanno
they make
chiesto
me
di venire a
laugh.
fare un corso presso
I'm talking
la scuola,
about
poi
facts that
fortunatamente
really
io vado
happened to
sempre per
me.
vedere l'ambiente,
People that
chi
asked
sono
me
le
to come and
persone,
teach a
di cosa si
course
può
at the yoga
parlare e cosa
school,
non si può, ma
and
non
then
ero
fortunately
così. 30
now
anni fa
I
ero
always
un
go
po'
to see
un po' meno
places
accorto
beforehand.
e quindi
Who
insomma
are
davo
these
un po' più per
people? What you
scontato
talk
che lo
about?
yoga
What you
fosse quello
cannot talk
vero.
about when you go there.
E
But I was
invece ho
not like that
scoperto
30
che
years
tante
back.
volte
I was less cautious
non
about
lo è.
this, so I used to take it for
Io non ho
granted that the
niente contro
yoga
le asana,
was the
contro
real
la
one.
respirazione,
Instead, I
sono
found out that most
potentissimi
times it
mezzi
is
di
not. I
purificazione,
have nothing against
di
asanas, against
concentrazione,
breathing.
però
They're
bisogna
extremely
arrivare a
powerful
dharana,
means of
dhyana,
purification, of concentration. But they should take
samadhi.
you to dharana, dhyana,
Pratyahara,
samadhi.
dharana, dhyana, samadhi.
Pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and
Le tre
samadhi.
forme che
I
sono
mean,
Antaranga Yoga,
the
quelle si può
three
dire
forms that are Antaranga Yoga,
che si
those
stanno
one can
avvicinando,
argue
ma
are close to the original yoga.
molte scuole,
But
molte
many
cosiddette
schools,
scuole di
many
yoga
so-called schools of yoga,
non vogliono che si parli
they
di
don't want you to speak
dell'incarnazione,
about
non vogliono che si parli di
reincarnation,
Dio, non vogliono che si
about
parli
God,
dell'anima,
they
non
don't want
vogliono
you
che
to
si
speak about the
parli
soul,
del
karma, and so on.
Allora
So
scriveteci fuori.
I think they shouldn't use they should use a different name from yoga.
Io ho sperimentato lo yoga
I experienced Kundalini
che
Yoga,
mi è piaciuto in modo
which I
particolare,
particularly liked,
perché c'è dentro
because
lo
at its
spirito,
core there is the
interpretato
soul.
nel modo
Yes,
giusto.
of course.
Of course, interpreted in the
Of course.
correct
È,
manner.
è proprio così. Io ti rammento
That's
ora un
right.
trattato, non so perché
That
mi passa
reminds
per
me
la
of a
mente questo
treatise.
trattato,
I don't know why this
ma
crosses my
io mi
mind now, but I remember
molto
very well
bene
studying
di averlo
it.
studiato e di averlo. È un trattato
It is a work
yoga,
on yoga
ma di stampo
from the
buddista
Buddhist tradition.
ed ha una
It has
componente
a
molto
very strong
forte
component
che è la
on psychology.
e per la psicologia ci sono degli spunti molto
It
interessanti.
has some very interesting insights for
Questa
modern
grande
psychology.
tradizione si chiama Theravada.
This great
È la
tradition is called
tradizione di
Theravada.
Hinayana.
It is a
Del
tradition
piccolo
of
viaggio, come lo
Hinayana,
chiamano
the little journey, as it is called by
i
the
cultori
followers of Tibetan
dello yoga
yoga,
tibetano, del buddismo
Tibetan
tibetano,
Buddhism,
che ha preso tutto il sud-est
which
asiatico
spread throughout
e che
all
ha sviluppato
Southeast Asia,
questa
and that
grande
developed this great knowledge
conoscenza della psicologia.
in the field of
Solo che
psychology. But, however
per
effective
quanto è efficace
it could be
nel
in
calmare la
calming the
mente,
mind,
nel connetterti
in connecting you
a uno
to a
stato di
state of
calma
calmness
che loro chiamano
that they
nirvana,
call nirvana,
manca tutta
it
quella
lacks
non so se
all
posso
that.
dire manca, ma
I don't know if I
insomma,
can say
a me
lacks,
è
but
mancata
I mean,
tutta quella
I felt the
parte
lack of
che è proprio
all that
il
part that is
rapporto
exactly
con
the
Dio, la
connection with
relazione
God,
con Dio, lo
the
scambio
relationship
con
with
Dio,
God, the
giocare
exchange
con
with
Dio,
God, playing with
stare
God,
insieme a
be
Dio,
together with God,
operare
to
in
act
nome
in
suo,
His
ma non in
name,
nome
not in the name
così
as a label,
da etichetta, no? Proprio come dire,
as if a label.
sono dalla parte della soluzione, quindi mi do
In
da
the sense
fare
that
per la
I'm on the
soluzione,
side of the solution, so I work
visto
hard
che
for
già
the
così
solution.
affollata l'altra tastiera,
Since we
quindi sono
know
dalla parte dei
it's already so crowded, the other side, that side of the problem.
Quindi quando si parla di yoga è un
So
universo,
when it comes to
bisogna
yoga,
chiarire
it's a whole
sempre bene di
universe,
che cosa stiamo
and it's
parlando,
necessary
e
to be
quali sono
clear about what we mean by
punti
yoga and what are the
su cui
points
insomma si
that
focalizza quel trattato.
that treatise or that practice focuses on. And we see that there are also great treatises on morality and on ethics. But when the main figure is missing, when God is missing, the relationship with Him is missing, the relationship, which is exactly precisely the characteristic of the Vaishnava Bhakti relationship. Man becomes more and more spiritual, man or woman, the human being, they purify themselves through the spiritual exercises. They become spirit. They become conscious of being spirit. Krishna, in the path of bhakti, Krishna turns into a human, so to speak. Apparently becomes a human. Only apparently. But he's still a superhuman according to all of his activities. This is called Leela. All these divine adventures in which the Absolute descends in the relative world to let himself to be known by the relative, by the limited. But he's not a man, he's not a man. It's not that because baby Krishna Kumar is in a phase of psychic development, because he's not psychological or psychically mature yet. He's mature, like when he's 125, old on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when he reveals the secrets of Bhagavad Gita, Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitramidam Uttamam. That is, I give this to you, I reveal the royal secret and I give to you the royal science. That same maturity and knowledge had baby Krishna in the pastimes in Vrindavan. And so, it's easy to say yoga, but we always need to understand if we're searching for, that connection with God or other things that the world offers, because there's not only transcendence, there's also Sattvaguna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. So I have understood over the past decades of meeting thousands and thousands of people, I understood that there is a tamasic way of practicing yoga, a rajasic way of practicing yoga, a sattvic way of practicing yoga, and a spiritual way of practicing yoga.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sometimes let us talk a bit about the things you do. Let's spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour together.
Haribol. Sono onorato. Mi chiamo Samuele.
My name is Samuele.
Sono onorato di essere qui.
I'm honored to be here.
Miei omaggi.
My obeisances. Thank you very much.
Mia domanda è:
My question is the sixth and last one.
Stress, insicurezza, solitudine e attacchi di panico sono alcune delle problematiche psichiche sempre più frequenti oggi, anche tra i più giovani. Quale aiuto possono apportare lo yoga e la meditazione?
All the help in the world. They can solve the problem at its roots, given that it's an actual meditation. Many people think they're meditating, but in reality they're just reflecting and thinking, because distraction or vikshipta doesn't allow you to meditate. Distraction and meditation don't go well together. Distraction is a boycott of meditation, so it must be avoided at all costs. Otherwise, you never come to meditation, the meditation you meant in your question. So meditation could help you with everything. For example, a type of meditation is to surrender unto God. And then we're tested. All sorts of tests will come that will keep us awake at night. Sarvadharma parityaja. To me only you must surrender, because I'm the shelter. And that's a meditation. The proof is in the pudding. What I mentioned earlier is very interesting. Mamana. Keep your mind on me, fixed on me. Whatever you do, offer it to me. That's a meditation. Whatever sacrifice, whatever work, activity, anything, offer it to me. Do it as an offering unto me. And that will allow you to be in me. That's a self-realization. There's another beautiful shloka in the 18th chapter, the 54th.
Brahma bhuta prasannatma nashochati nakankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu man bhaktin labate param.
When you realize for real to be spirit, then you are satisfied. Prasannatma. Prasanna is the satisfaction of the soul. You got nothing more to complain of the past, what happened to you, his fault, their fault. Doesn't matter anymore. It's erased, purified. You don't even have to mind about the future. No more worries whatsoever. For the one who lives like that, without nostalgia or in logical dreams for the future, the one who's happy in the here and now, in the present, for what he has, he sees what he has, not what is lacking. Only sees what he has, not what is lacked. This is the characteristic of one who is liberated. Sama means that is equal to all living beings. No difference between species, race, skin colors, or social status. When someone is like that, then he discovers and attains my love. So, we got everything in our hands. We got everything in our hands. We must be conscious that even when we do the smallest thing, we must do it for the benefit of our audience, even before our own benefit. To put it in a very simple words, to be straightforward. As I answer you, I must think of your benefit rather than mine. Because what it does to you will come back around. Because between me and you, there's an incredible connection. We're all interconnected, all creatures. Individualism is a cancer. Individualism, which is not individuality. You got it? Like pietism and piety. Do you understand the difference? Individualism is a neurotic way to experience our individuality. Because we are distinct, but at the same time equal to our source, that is God, the soul of all souls. As individual souls, we are part of the Supreme Soul. Individualism is a tumor. A tumor. What does a tumor do? What do the cancer cells do? They dissociate from the organism, and by doing that, acting thus in an individualistic and diseased way, they kill the body. So, if you think it like that, you will feel both ways. They say in English, in both ways, you feel simultaneously different from others, a mouse, a fish, monkey, boar, deer, a tree. You feel different, but at the same time one on a higher level. This is the definition that makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you?
Ha senso. Dovremmo provare a combattere questo individualismo
Sì.
con progetti.
Yes,
È uno dei più grandi, e tutte le paure
all fears
vengono da
come
questo
from
pessimo
this terrible
investimento
investment
che
we
abbiamo
made
fatto
in individualism.
nell'individualismo.
From individualism comes expectations. One keeps feeding his selfish expectations.
Non capisce che tutto
One does not understand
che ama
that
non è
all
all'esterno,
we love
è
is not
dentro.
without,
Quindi
but
noi dobbiamo
within.
imparare a
So we need
realizzare
to
la
realize
nostra
our spiritual energy,
energia spirituale, la nostra le
the
caratteristiche
characteristics
della nostra
of our
natura
spiritual
spirituale.
energy, of our
Il
spiritual
nostro
nature,
Satchidananda Vigraha.
our Satchitananda Vigraha.
Grazie mille.
Thank you very much.
Haribol,
My name is Marco.
Benvenuto,
I come
Marco.
from Venice.
Welcome, Marco.
Thank you. It is an honor
to meet
to be
you.
here.
oltre a
To
queste
be
domande
honest,
non ne avevo
I didn't
preparate
prepare
altre,
any other
sinceramente.
questions
Non
in addition to
preoccupare.
those.
Don't worry.
Riflettendo
Don't
a
I was
tutte le
reflecting
belle
upon
cose
all
che
the beautiful
Non
things
ci
you told
hai
us
don't
so
detto
far.
fino adesso.
Non preoccupare.
Però ho una curiosità se,
But I do have
se
a
posso.
curiosity, if I may
Cosa
ask.
ti ha spinto
What pushed you at 30
a
years
30
old
anni
to set
a
off on a journey?
partire e come hai
And
incontrato
how did you encounter
Srila
Srila
Prabhupada?
Prabhupada?
Ero al culmine del
I
mio
was at the
successo
pinnacle of my
professionale.
professional career.
Ero
I had
dotato di
access to
mezzi
lots of
decine di volte di quelli
facilities, so many more
che
than what I could
potevo
use in a healthy way.
utilizzare in maniera sana. E sentivo,
I
avevo
started
cominciato a sentire a
feeling
partire dal 73,
very strongly
73,
since
74, in
1973,
maniera
74
ormai assordante, che non era la mia vita.
that was not my
Però avevo,
life. But I had
come dire,
the
il karma
right
giusto
karma,
per fare le cose che
so to
stavo
speak, to
facendo.
do what I
Ero
was
molto
doing.
creativo,
I was very
ero
creative and
sprizzante.
excited,
E le
and
persone
people
volevano questa
wanted that
creatività,
creativity
volevano proprio che
and
ci fosse
the
sempre
feeling of
questa
novelty.
novità. E io avevo cominciato
But then
a
I started
interrogarmi
questioning
sullo scopo, quale sarebbe
my
stata la mia vita.
purpose, what my life was going to be
Perché
like.
caratteristiche
Those
che mi
features that
rendevano
made me
invidiabile all'esterno,
enviable to the eyes of the
io
others,
capivo che
I knew
che non era quello che volevo.
that was not what I
Cioè,
wanted.
era una vita di
It
quantità,
was a life of
ma la
quantity,
qualità
but the
diventava sempre
quality
meno.
became less and less.
Quindi cresceva
So the quantity
enormemente,
increased
abnormemente
exponentially,
la quantità,
more and more.
prolificava tutto.
Everything
Quando ho
increased.
incontrato Prabhupada avevo 6
When I
aziende,
met Prabhupada, I had 6 companies,
30 anni,
30
avevo
years
fatto
old,
molte cose.
had done many things with
Erano fatte con
people
persone care,
I held
tutte
dear,
persone con le quali
people I
io avevo
met
trovato
as I
nel mondo facendo delle
did
cose.
things in the
Io avevo
world.
in mente
I had
di fare
ideas,
qualcosa, le persone sono venute
and these
e
people
loro
made these
facevano queste
things for
cose
me.
mentre io continuavo a
As I
pensare, a
kept thinking
creare,
and
eccetera.
creating,
E potevo andare avanti di quel
I could
ritmo,
have
arrivare anche a
gone
30, a 50,
on and
ma
on,
per me 6
expanding
erano
30 and
già
50 companies, but 6
erano
was
già
enough
sufficienti per capire
to
che si
understand that it
moltiplicavano le cose
was
che non
only
servivano, che a me non servivano,
meaningless things that were
mentre quelli che
increasing,
inseguivo
while those that
prima
I
era
was following
era
before,
un prima che lo vedevo
that before I
come
could only see far
una
in the
profondità
distance,
marina, no?
like at
Qualcosa
the
che non si riesce
bottom
a
of the
distinguere.
ocean, blurred in the
Sapevo che
distance,
c'era, io l'avevo
something
vissuto,
that I
l'avevo
knew
proprio
was there, I
vissuto.
experienced before.
E quindi sono stati 2 o
So
3
it was
anni di
2 or 3
ricerca di
years of
quello che
intense
proprio è,
research.
che proprio cercavo,
I
perché
didn't know
non
what I was
sapevo che
looking
cosa
for.
cercavo, e man mano che trovavo
As
qualche
I found a
traccia, qualche
little
briciola di
bit
quello
of
che
what I was
cercavo,
looking for,
lo
I
collezionavo,
would
tenevo
pick it up
insieme,
and
giravo
keep
il
it with me.
mondo,
I traveled the world.
e avevo capito
I
bene quel che
understood
non dovevo
well
fare
what I
e
should
non lo
not do,
facevo.
and I didn't do
Però
it.
non avevo capito
But I did not
cosa avrei
understand
dovuto
what I
fare.
should have done.
Avevo capito, insomma,
By myself,
ero
I kind of
riuscito
taught myself
quasi da autodidatta a
what
capire
I
cosa non
should
dovevo
not do.
fare. L'aspetto
And this
yama
is the yama,
degli yoga.
yama in yoga,
Yama, perché non sa da fare.
what you should not do.
Però non avevo capito l'aspetto
But I did not understand the
niyama,
niyama,
quello che
what
invece
it is necessary to
è
do.
indispensabile fare. E così mi portò per la seconda o la
So
terza
this
volta in
brought me
India,
for the
sembra
second or
la
third
terza,
time in India. second time with the serious spirit of search, spiritual seeking. I was going back to where I got lost.
Ero tornato indietro dove mi ero perso, dove avevo preso una via sicuramente molto luccicante,
very shining
una
path,
sirena,
a siren,
un
and
Eldorado, che però
but I
capivo che non
knew
portava a nulla.
that path would have not taken me anywhere. I knew I was becoming caustic, tranchant,
direbbero francesi.
as the same French.
Tranchant, perché sentivo che
I
perdevo
felt
tempo,
like I was wasting my
le
time,
mie
wasting my
possibilità,
chances.
e capivo che la vita
I
stava
knew my life
scorrendo.
was passing,
Quindi 28,
so
29,
those years,
30 anni,
28, 29, 30,
erano proprio quelli
31,
di questa
the years of my intense search.
la ricerca è continuata,
The
ma
search
almeno
continued
era,
after that,
in
but after
seguito è
that it
stato,
was an
come dire, una via
enlightening
illuminata
path,
da Prabhupada,
enlightened by Prabhupada, by my
amatissimi
beloved
miei confratelli,
God brothers, by this
da questa
extraordinary
letteratura straordinaria,
literature.
il secondo anno
The
che sono
second
andato a
year I went back
incontrare
to see
Prabhupada,
Prabhupada.
sono tornato a incontrare Prabhupada e ho
With a corner of my eye, I saw one dealing with some technical stuff. I thought, what is he doing? He was recording. And so I asked, do you have Prabhupada's recordings? And he said, yes, why? What do you want? I want the recordings. And he told me, the recordings are in Los Angeles, but we were in Vrindavan. Please give it to me. No, they first must go to the BBT. That's what he said. So I understood Prabhupada left some audio traces, and that if he would leave his body soon, which seemed to be the case at that time. So I bought as many as I could, something like 1,700 or 1,800 Prabhupada's lectures. I looked for them everywhere in the world, and I used to bring them with me anywhere I went for decades. Even when I traveled for work, I had my briefcase with my deities' pictures, my japa, and the books I used to study at the time, Shrimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or Chaitanya Charitamrita, and some pictures of Prabhupada and cassettes of Prabhupada. Wherever I went, I used to bring a bunch of them with me. Singapore, Atlanta, in Georgia, or the Emirates. If they invited me for dinner, I would never go. I became a little mysterious to them. I would say I have to study or that I'm writing an article, so they would let me go. But they would still keep their eyes on me. Anyway, but it's nice relationships anyway, nice relationships.
And after the first professional meetings that we used to have,
I would agree to dine with them, but I used to do it only under my conditions. I offered my food, and we would always end up talking about karma and reincarnation. So even during those years while I was working, I have good memories of those times. And in the meantime, I also went through all those tragedies that happen in life. My mother left her body at 96, my father at 68. Very dear God brothers and friends left their bodies. Life keeps going. The laws of nature don't change, but the perception you or A or we or they, I have of them can change. We don't expect to change the laws of nature. We need to change our perception. So we need to see that behind nature there is Sarva Loka Maheshwara. Sarva means all, Loka means world, Maheshwara, the Supreme Lord, who is behind everything that happens in the world. So even if here looks like a mental hospital, that's not a wrong opinion, but we must know that behind this there is Sarva Loka Maheshwara. So we can bring a great contribution. Our contribution is the goodness that we do. If we do good to others, that's a great power, irresistible force that defeats the impious and the rascals.
Mi chiamo Viola.
My name is Viola.
Viola, welcome.
Yes. I feel so lucky.
Mi sento tanto fortunata.
Your name
I feel so
is in the
lucky.
shirt you're wearing.
Yes.
Very well. You're coherent.
Ti ringrazio per
I thank you for all these teachings and for having played with us.
Avrei una domanda.
I have a question.
Come cambia nel
How does the relationship with our own body change with the advancement in the spiritual journey, also according to your personal experience? And what is the difference between disidentification and scission?
The split is a very bad psychological disease. The worst of all is schizophrenia. We should not disassociate from our body. We should just disidentify with it. This is different. We must take care of our body. We take care of our body in the principle of health, not to take care of it for other reasons like sensual reasons or libido. That's something different. We must take care of our body for health reasons. And if we keep it healthy, and if we don't disturb it with unhealthy desires, needs, unhealthy thoughts, then the body has its own intelligence. It can keep itself healthy and brilliant. It has a great intelligence. But if we interfere with fear against that intelligence, or with anxiety, or with distress, or if we interfere with resentment. Resentment is very toxic within the mind. It's even worse than anger, because you can vent your anger, but resentment keeps producing venom, acid, for many, many years. Only vengeance is worse than resentment. In terms of toxicity, we're talking about toxic mental content. And do you know what one's personality is? It's the result of all the mental projections with which one identifies themselves. So we need to take those identifications off our mental projection and bring them to the soul. Then the body, the bio part of ourselves, together with the mental and psychic spiritual part of ourselves, are perfectly in line. We should never neglect our body, neither with fasting nor with overeating. Anorexia, bulimia are both dangers for the body and the health, as well as the over-endeavor to maintain your body healthy when one is fearful of old age. Old age comes faster if you're in anxiety. It comes faster. The skin loses its luster that is in a healthy body. And the same is for so many other symptoms we don't have time to discuss now. But this is something that must be studied. I spoke of this at universities, institutions, hospitals. I gave seminars on this topic. Psychology of the assistance to those who are terminally ill and relatives. In the major hospitals in Rome, Florence, Bologna, in the center north of Italy. Once, the head of the department,
dipartimenti, come li chiamano loro, di queste sezioni della medicina,
the head of the department invited me, and the audience was mainly composed of psychologists, psycho-oncologists, traumatologists, and doctors and nurses.
Erano i primi tempi che facevano la laurea gli infermieri.
And he introduced me saying, "Here people die like flies." What a statement. He said, "We need to do something." And I thought, what do you mean we need to do something? I made it clear that I wasn't there to give people immortality, but I was there to assist them in their final journey. Please read my brochure. I understand my program, which was approved by the minister of the Italian government. Try and understand what my program is. Mine is psychology of the assistance to those who are terminally ill and relatives. So we take them towards this moment, we make them live the process of dying in a conscious way, not with fear and creating fear in others, not with fearful people around, but make them conscious of their eternity. Because in reality, nobody knows better than those who are just left the body, those who have just died, that death doesn't exist. So help people to do this transition, to make this transition with serenity. And there is a book that could be interesting for you if you like, Psychology of the Cycle of Life. The point is how we perceive life and death, not how they appear. We shall become able to understand that birth and death do not exist. The soul exists and it is eternal. Birth and death are epiphenomena relative only to the body. We enter into a body, but we pre-exist birth. We exit a body and we keep existing after so-called death. It is very important that we understand these concepts very clearly, not only intellectually or in theory, but to experience this in our lives. It happened to me, such an experience, more than one, when I was about to leave my body, and I could realize that it wasn't the medical equipment around me, not even those nice doctors who were working for me to help me, but it was my heritage, what I had in my conscience, in my consciousness, the way I could interpret what was going on. When I got well, after some time, then I thought, well, if I had left my body at that point, that would have been a very good bargain, in a way. Then, of course, there's all the dear ones we would leave behind, and that's very sad. We would feel very sorry. But nobody ever promised us immortality of the body. So the body must be taken care of, because it's an instrument. The first time I met Prabhupada, he told me the human form of life is the greatest capital we have. Because without the human form of life, we can't achieve self-realization. So that's why we need to take care of our human form of life. We need to take our flowers too. I will ask if they're watering them. Do you know? Please ask around, and if not, we should move it somewhere else. So we need to know what the purpose of life is. Because Maya is like the Pied Piper that took all the mice to drown themselves. It seems people are brainwashed and intentionally go towards their own ruin. And they don't have a goal in their lives. When they're not clear about the goal in their lives, the meaning and the goal, parangati, the ultimate good, well, then they're slaves of those who terrorize them. Indeed, fear comes from having lost the goal of life. Thank you very much for your participation. It was a great pleasure. I gotta move to another room now. You can join us if you like.
We brought you a gift.
Parte del secondo
Thank
volume
you.
del Bhagavatam per la
The second volume of the Bhagavatam in
50°
occasion of the
anniversario di Shri
50th
Radha
anniversary of Sri Sri Radha Londoneshwara
Tempio di
from
Londra.
the Temple of London.
E c'è tutta un'introduzione.
Thank you very much. I appreciate its cover and the printing, which was not neglected, thankfully. The great classics of India. We need to wear them as great classics too, not just knowing that there is a great classic inside. In the spiritual world, form is as important as the substance, because even the form is spiritual. So if we're educated in aesthetics, beauty will save us if used in the service of God.